Good afternoon, Aristo.
Good morning, Ron. Let me get this this thing settled a little bit. My image is partial. Okay, doesn't matter. So, I've been listening to your many videos today, and it's incredibly synchronistic with respect to my own experience. And it's very interesting with respect to some of the astrological stuff that was occurring this month. Now, when we speak of astrology, we think very primitively, in my opinion, because in order for an astrological configuration to affect us, it has to resonate personally with our own birth chart, okay? So this doesn't happen equally. So when we see an astrological configuration, we say this affects the world, but how does it resonate with me? So there are tons and tons of waves moving through the ethers that affect the world, but they affect us differently. And it's not easy to correlate all of these things as a general effect upon the world. We try to simplify things because it's convenient, but at the same time, we forget what we're doing. We forget that we're actually simplifying everything. Now, where am I going with this? I'm saying basically that the astrological configuration this time is bringing up issues that relate to our purpose, our path, our ideals, our aspirations, and it indicates what we need to set aside as secondary and what is primary. It is putting forth emotional issues, especially, that are incredibly challenging for some of us, more so than for others. For some of us, it's a kind of, the emotional effect may be uplifting, like a revelation. For others, it may be incredibly challenging, but for everybody, it narrows the playing field in a sense of primary issues that can be put as that we can prioritize. And if we want to resolve our situation, to activate our DNA, so to speak, to get to a position where opportunities can come up, these are the key issues, the key triggers, because DNA is activated emotionally. It is not activated through ideas and through affirmations. All of these affirmations and ideas are meant to access our feelings. It is the deep down organic feeling nature, emotional and sensual, that activates DNA more than anything. Thoughts are just like lenses focalizing these energies. So what I want to say here is that we shared a kind of synchronicity, because at one point I felt, and I feel this occasionally, one of the products of meditating and doing yoga and all of these for me was an activation of an intuition or a sense of what's going on in the ethers. In the sense, some occultist symbolized it once as being aware of what's going on in the councils of hell. Basically,
that's in the Pentagon or the White House?
That's in all of them. If you can take them all and put them into one underworld thing. But at the same time, it's in the heart of every single human being. We all harbor the psychopath. We all harbor God. We all harbor them all. We're more than God, actually. I mean, God is one ideal, one.
You're going to get some flack for that one, from the fundamentalists anyway.
I should get some flack, but at the same time, I don't disagree with them. Because if you take something and you purify it, and you distill a certain ideal that you define a certain way, you say that distillation is better than the rest. You have all of this dirt, and this dirt has diamonds and gold and crap and leaves and all kinds of things inside, trash, and you distill the diamonds out. You say, no, these diamonds and the gold are the value. So we are the diamonds, the gold, the crap, the leaves, the trash, the cigarette butts, everything. In that sense, we are more than God. And we also have the capability of transforming the crap and the leaves, not to gold. You can't eat gold. Gold is worthless, I mean, really, for a big commodity, except for the fact that kings used to wear it on their heads to transmit their thoughts to other people and impose their authority and psychic control. It's literally a metal that interacts with the human energy field for psychic control. Look at all of the ancient kings. They all wore it heavily, especially on their heads. But anyways, we are more than all of this, and thus we hold a certain burden, a certain potential, a certain responsibility. But to go back to this, because there's many things swimming in my head, so to speak, I feel occasionally when these councils are up to something, they're always up to something, but when they're trying to push the envelope, and occasionally, almost cyclically, they're pushing the envelope of causality. I don't mean like they're doing something physically, but you can sense the atmosphere when it's like a storm cloud gathering of some impending intention that affects the atmosphere. And it's not predicting the future, it's forecasting the weather. It's basically, feeling the pressure, the lows and the highs and all of this, and knowing that, well, with this storm cloud, you're going to have a storm. And these storm clouds are artificial because they accumulate the suffering of all humanity and focus them. And that's why they want us to suffer. And they focus them toward causing something, moving beyond the psychic, the emotional, the etheric, and doing it in the physical plane. This is ongoing, but no matter how much suffering there is in the world, it's not enough to really end civilization. It's not enough to there's two tipping points, the good one and the bad one. So it's not enough to move it to the bad tipping point. And these, directions.
Timeline 2.
Timeline 2, exactly. We're in a tug of war between timeline 1 and timeline 2. From our perspective, there is no guarantee, regardless of how things look like from another divine top of the mountain perspective. So when this happens, I've spent years basically, again, esoteric processes. You can establish vibrations that deal with this, that either block it, dissolve it, transform it. Blocking is easy, dissolving is a little more difficult, but it can also be impossible when the underworlds are up, so the option is transforming it. But that is incredibly, and you can't even tell people how painful it is. It's incredibly painful. And anybody looking at you might say, well, I don't see you, freaking out or slithering in the ground or rolling around. I don't see wounds opening, so it's all in your head. It doesn't matter. I mean, the pain, the internal pain is on a different level, but it's there. And so when you deal with this, you're in the heart of what you might call the darkest elements of the human condition. Both suffering, it's not a physical type of thing, but it's still, you can imagine you're with a loved one and you lose the loved one. That pain is unimaginable, depending on how deep the relationship is. So this is similar. This is like having a child and that child being ripped from your arms and being killed in front of you, and then feeling that wave. But it's not you. That's kind of the saving grace, that it's not a personal situation. It's an impersonal one, but you're challenged to personalize it if you're going to integrate it. That's why people deny this stuff and don't even realize they're doing it. I mean, I can't blame them. It took me many, many years to realize that unless I approach things this way, nothing's going to change as far as my reality frame, my experience, and my world are concerned. This is how...
Denial is a program.
It's a program based on a reflex. It's a survival reflex. But it's, you cannot create programs in a vacuum, in my opinion, and according to my observations. You cannot hypnotize people to do what is 100% against their nature. If you're going to hypnotize somebody, if you're going to give them a suggestion in a program, there has to be a seed within them. So we have all of these seeds, of course. And it is up to us to mutate them, transform them, deal with them in a way by altering the very ground of our being. And that's what we are challenged to do. But again, from my perspective, you deal with this incredible, it's what I felt. I used to hang out with people who later turned out were into cults and things like that, were doing nasty stuff, and they projected a lot of this kind of psychic, this energy, these thought forms, whatever you want to call it, and also around places where there was misery, You go into a place where people are starving, a ghetto where there's high crime, a house where there was a murder. You can feel this residue, and it's very, very similar. It all connects, and it basically leads to a conclusion: life is meaningless, end it, forget it. To the effect that because there's no redemption for these energies, they all orient toward the only solution, and I've talked about this before, is to end it. And this comes back in cycles within our psyches and affects us in everything we do. And we can't even, access our potential because these are in the way. So we go to a mountaintop experience and they all disappear. You're above the clouds. Now, I used to resent mountaintop experiences. I reached a point in yoga where most people consider, oh, this is a nice point. And from there on in, they start wearing the white robes and get followers and I don't know what. But, I did reach a point where I saw that door opening, let's put it that way. And I could have pursued it. But I resented it. I thought, well, this is the problem, But I still want the mountaintop experience, but I want the clouds gone. I want to be the mountaintop to come to the valley. Invert the mountain. Invert the sky, bring it to earth and all of this. But what happens when you do that? Well, you are basically in the way of all those people who hate God. So you have that experience where everything's really cool, the paradox, but you are also experiencing everybody suffering at the same time. And feeling that resentment funnel through you because you're in the way. Basically, you're the next thing, like a step-up transformer, to their prayers. And you can put yourself in that position. So it's very, very interesting because you cannot deny the divinity within you, but you also feel all these things. And this starts reflecting in your life because sometimes people come in front of you and they can sense this. They ask your advice. They feel that you have a sort of charisma or something. But when you cannot alleviate their problems, not all of them do that, not everyone, but a substantial, just even if a few people do that, it's impacting. They resent you. They think that you have it better than them because they're so much in denial, they cannot understand, at least as far as I'm concerned, what I'm dealing with, an accumulation of pain that the only reason I'm not going insane from it is because I'm not personalizing it. I'm not saying that I'm neutral, but I'm saying that it's not a personal drama. However, I cannot really do anything unless I do experience personal drama. Because my ego then would be out of the picture. My personality wouldn't be part of it. I couldn't ground it. So personal drama is necessary, but it has always been my intention to minimize it to the abject necessity. And I firmly believe that anybody can intend this. It's like when you make the commitment to face everything as much as you can, you have a grace thing. You have a plus, and that is you are able to minimize your personal drama in the situation. When you start refusing, even if you're not aware of it, when you basically, and it's natural, it's like, okay, let me just take a vacation. Oh, just a little longer. Let me sleep a little more. Let me, put it aside a little more. Increase the coffee break time, so to speak. When you do this, then the personal drama interferes. And it says, look, and it doesn't interfere because somebody's keeping tabs on you. It does so because there's an energy overflow. If you don't let the energy flow through impersonal channels to the point that they reach their saturation, then the remainder comes through personal channels, and it's something you realize you can handle. It's not comfortable, but you can handle it, and it's not going to break you. In fact, it makes you stronger. If you start shutting off the valve, however, up until a certain degree, if you basically realize, look, my constitution can't take any more of this, but I am committed to increase the width and the clarity of my channels, the receptivity of my being to this. But if you basically sneak away and shut down and go and just enter a routine without even realizing it, things get peaceful. But your mind still plays the same old drama as on the outside to keep you thinking they're not peaceful. But on a deep level, you're not really feeling that same intimacy with the issues. then all of a sudden the personal drama comes up. So what I did basically, when I sensed what the storm clouds are doing is basically going, okay, here is the impersonal. And we are forcing you to personalize it through these conditioned programs. So we are learning to dare and be courageous enough to disregard the programs and keep moving with what we feel is true. It is not bad to blame God, in my opinion, because if I was God, I'd say, well, this goes with the territory. Obviously you're going to have, in this kind of situation, no matter how much wisdom you have, and you know it also, the wisdom you have on top of the mountain that you experience, can you bring it down and spread it around and uplift everybody? No. And the reason is that God needs grounding points. You are basically with God at that time, in those terms, whatever your terms you want to do this. And everything is all right in the world. But it goes two ways. When you're at the top of the mountain, do you bring your resentment with you? Probably not. So what God basically told me is that it's meaningless to bitch from the ground level. Everybody's in pain. You're all insane down there. It's meaningful to bitch when you're more lucid. So on top of the mountain, that's if you actually carry the gripe with you to the top of the mountain, you're actually bringing something that can heal in God's proximity. And if this happens, you can actually feel that essence. You can't bring it all up, obviously, but you're bringing earth to heaven. That's what you're doing. A portion of earth. You're carrying you're taking a basket of your psyche, of your being, and putting a pound of dirt in the basket and carrying it, and it's not easy to do. Believe me, because on the road to Damascus, to the top of the mountain, there are traps designed to keep that stuff from coming up.
I can remember times when I've been in that mountaintop thing where I'd say to God, what are you going to do with a guy like me? Because I'm not going to lie. I'm still going to tell the truth, or my truth. And that was my big thing for a long time. What are you going to do with a man like me? The paradox man.
I'm going to accept all of the shit that you have to give me. But the access point is the top of the mountain, or as close as you can make it. Now, why are these traps there? I feel them. And in the negativity zone, I go through experiences that I can shake up the ethers a little bit. I feel this happening. With the war on Syria and all these things and these threats and this and that, I can feel enough of a shake-up where I can feel a response. Something shaken and and then the fears come up. And then the threats start. And all of these things. And then everybody around me starts getting upset. I'm shaking up the psychopaths, and everybody around me is saying, no, stop. Don't do that. Don't bother those people. They're not saying it consciously, but that's the pattern that keeps arising. So there are traps that have been set by us human beings to keep heaven away from earth. For the gods to rule, God needs to be in exile. And if the gods have the power to create form, they make form, basically. They're artisans of essence. They do not create essence. You cannot wipe out your own existence, because if you wipe out all of your form, whatever's left is basically free of the trappings and says, oh yeah, okay, things are cool at this level, and existence in itself is worth it. But this forming things and separating this and all of this, something's going on there. So these gods that the Pleiadian material says are the problem have basically insulated themselves from God. And thus, by proxy, we are insulated, but because it's not really our choice, because the essence that came through and became form is actually one that wants to unify everything. Deep down, our paradox is that we are a combination of the gods, of God, and of goddess, and the full essence of everything, the substratum, the unconscious, anything that is not of spirit, but is still divine. all of these things come together, and we find the happy medium of all of these things, the happy medium, the one where nothing is compromised. And so we make the gods happy. God, of course, is always happy because we're happy. The goddess is happy. And the goddess is actually the pivot of everything. Because if the goddess is happy, another name for the goddess is desire. The goddess is the goddess of all desire, all will, all wanting, all need, all magnetic, substantial receiving of fulfillment. God is the giver. God is the active principle, the spirit that radiates and basically says, what do you need? I will provide it. And thus I partake of the experience of that fulfillment. But I cannot give you what you need if you do not receive me. And it's not your fault that you do not receive me. Your very creators who wanted to individualize and do things a different way because they did not want to be in the spitting image of their father, so to speak. They wanted to be different. And so they denied their hearts. And in denying their hearts, they entered into a world that was meaningless and thus were challenged with a negation of their own existence. And they denied the negation of their own existence, so they projected it onto human beings. And that was the divine plan, because human beings then are able to close the circle. And basically able to close the circle because they can learn to close the circle. And the gods were afraid of the human beings, so as soon as they realized that they were starting to evolve, and no matter what they did to them...
We'll confound their language.
Exactly. Exactly. We'll exile... We'll put them to earth. Maybe that'll screw them up, but this is, that's exactly what should have happened, because this is the place of redemption. We'll confound their language. Oh, now they're diversifying. We'll do this, we'll do that. We'll give them magical abilities and all these secret books, whatever, secret knowledge to screw each other over. And they ultimately, they were actually able to heal things with those abilities. But at the same time, the abilities atrophied, because whenever you take something and you move it to the extreme, it threatens to become a revelation, to become an apocalypse. When things go over the line, and I don't mean in isolation, like the psychopaths in isolation upon us, but the psychopaths upon us upon them, everything upon each other, the full mixing pot goes into greater chaos, which doesn't lead to destruction, but can easily lead to a revelation, a revealing. Why are the gods afraid of the human beings having the tree of life? They didn't care about the tree of good and evil in that story. They were afraid human beings were going to actually start eating of the tree of life, which was of the same tree and stuff, that they could actually tell the difference between their knowledge and the actual immortality potential that they had. And so that's why, let's banish them from this etheric plane. Let's clothe them in animal skins. Animal skins is basically a biological body. And put them on a material basis within, and some people say, that then marks when when apes were genetically transformed and thus grafted onto this etheric, energetic, plasmic type of thing. Because in science, for example, the Pleiades don't have planets. Science says that the stars are 100 million years old, actually. They're younger than the dinosaurs. They're big, blue, hot stars of intense activity, but they don't have planets. They're not material manifestations. There is no manifest physical anything in that area. They're young, emergent...
I didn't realize that.
Precisely. It's a vibration. And if you read the Pleiadian material, they say, we joke around with symbols and we say things, we mean them, but they're not as they appear. So, what are we? Ask yourself the question. They're not literally like that, but there's an essence that we can, they call it interdimensional or a different dimension, but I'm digressing. The thing that I wanted to say is that if anybody, and that's why I refer to people on your site, I don't just go around, some people say, why don't you spread the word? Because there are some people with specialized abilities in this world that are more internalized, that have the potential to experience a top of the mountain or even a hilltop experience. That's okay too. Moments of lucidity, we're like all insane, but some of us have moments of lucidity. And those moments of lucidity are a treasure. And like I said, there are roadblocks that don't stop you if you actually go to the top of the mountain. What they say is that you have to go without baggage. You have to go there, but what's the point? So I go there and I'm my naked self and I prance around in the meadows on top and then I go back down. I have to bring my baggage up because that's the whole thing. This is the problem here. You can see this is the problem. The clouds obscure things both ways because that consciousness needs to ground into the medium of matter so vibration can be substantial. Otherwise, it's too otherworldly. And we become otherworldly if we just go, or a part of us actually goes to the top of the mountain. So you and I, both in our different ways, confronted those blocks. I believe many psyches are actually beginning to think this way, are actually intuitively, they may not word it as I do, notice that if you're going to bitch at God, you better actually have the goods and go to as close a position in your awareness as you can. And so actually you shorten the distance, but you have to bring to you the goods of your complaints. Bring to you the issues there so they can become apparent. And if they are transformed, since they belong back on earth, you can easily bring them down, and that's going to affect everything. You've turned... Do I have time? I think I have some time left. But I noticed that they shut down your site after you started bitching, not bitching, but you were commenting on Pope Francis. And you've done this before, and it created a little bit of a ruckus, but this time, somebody exploded. I mean, it really hit somebody's, I don't know who, private citizen, some group, or whatever. But it bothered somebody to the point that they complained, and they heard those complaints, unjustified complaints, as you said, and they not only shut down your site, they took all my videos from my Facebook page. And they didn't take the ones with the thumbnails with the pictures on. They only took the ones with the thumbnails and the pictures. They didn't take the ones where I just had a link. So somebody did it by hand. It wasn't an automatic bot that just removed the links. So somebody personally interacted to shut your site down and basically, take the videos away from my own site. And at the same time, I experienced a conflict with somebody. I'm still experiencing it. All of a sudden, this person who, came around and said, oh, you're such a spiritual person. Oh, I'll call you guru and all of this crap. And I'm like, Jesus. But behind it, I sense the passive-aggressive manipulation type of thing. And all of a sudden, the guy, why aren't you suffering? Basically. Why don't you go out and suffer like the rest of us? It's like, hey, man, when you were having a good time and I was suffering, I didn't come to people like you and make that kind of demand. Then he got completely pissed off and was just ill will to the level that I'm saturated with this ill will now. It's a very, very uncomfortable feeling for somebody, not just to resent you because it's not him. I walk in the street and it's everywhere. He's turned me on to the signature of everybody's suffering and resentment at a level that I experienced before, but, I eased myself out of it. Because, it's too painful, but now I can deal with it. It's a constant challenge. But the essence of his complaint, and the essence of a complaint of somebody who resents you putting down religious figures or spiritual figures or New Age figures, is that you're either spiritual or you're material. There is nothing in between. If you go into the in-between place, and especially if you resonate the ability to have the Payanita too, you become an object of hate, not because people are just jealous of you, because they actually see that you can do something. You become an ambassador of God, in other words, on earth, because you contain both the mundane, and this is a vibration, it's not a title. It's not a place in any social, institutional thing. It's something every human being will sense, and it's not necessarily a good thing in terms of how they will treat you. Because what you're telling God, they are seeing, God in you in some way, and they're saying, why don't you do something about it? I've had people actually do this in moments where I could actually sustain the top of the mountain experience while walking on earth, whenever I slipped into a feeling, wow, this is cool, man, this is more grounded and actually feel it affects things, and I thought, well, if it affects things, people will be blessed by it, will feel positive. No, they got even more pissed off. Because if I'm going to be that way, I have to channel all of their complaints and hold them and bring them into that top of the mountain awareness and say, okay, this is the connecting point. God does not connect with some nice sanctuary that's clean and pristine and swept away with all the priests sitting around with nice robes welcoming him. God connects to the crap heap. Because
piety is not spiritual.
Exactly. Piety, I don't know what
piety is. A mask.
You know, it's complete denial. It keeps God away. It's exorcism against God. God wants honesty. We want honesty. And when we bitch at God, we're bitching at ourselves. And that really is the deepest form of honesty. But at the same time, the one who's bitching has a legitimate gripe. And that's the thing, bringing the paradox together and knowing that the greatest, and this is also what happens. That was one of the things that came through when I kind of shook things up psychically, you might say, in a deep level of meditation. There was, society's going to collapse. If you bring any form of change, things are going to go sour. And they're going to go sour, and it's not just because the psychopaths have a plan to do so, because everybody resents their existence. And that resentment is an insane resentment. It's not connected to the causes. It's in isolation. That's the shadow. It's all by itself, a resentment that has no reason for being other than fulfilling what it thinks is its purpose. To be relieved, it has to kill everything. And so we are under a great deal of challenge. And when somebody tells me, why don't you, how do we give advice to homeless people? Somebody's on their deathbed with 5 kids to feed. Tell them what to do. That's, I hate to disappoint anybody, but I'm not going to say I cannot tell them. I do my best to look for solutions because that kind of request is also something an ambassador takes upon themselves. It's not because I want to give somebody, I can give somebody a solution, but because I can take on the feeling and relate to it. And that gives something to transform. Because when something, even a little bit, is transformed, then a solution comes closer. And so all I can tell people is you have to strengthen yourself in any way you know how to open up to the fact that being honest with yourself is in your best interests, and that I am basically focusing on those people who are less motivated to really do something, and I mean internally. When you reach the point of being in the hospital with your limbs cut off and 5 kids to feed, you are incredibly motivated because your very deepest sense of biology is based on desperation. That desperation motivates you. However, it's far more constructive when you're not desperate, when you're in a position that you can reach the top of a mountain. Do not use that experience as an escape. Do not abuse the ability to escape. Using it sometimes is healing and helps us to just revitalize, but its true purpose is as a connecting point. And so I refer with everything I say to those people who have this ability, to the people who are internalized, to the people who are not to the point of being completely desperate where it's obvious. Then you say, oh, finally, now this guy realizes, or this girl or whatever, that something needs to be done. We want to avoid the tipping point. There are many personal tipping points that are moving into timeline 2, or so they appear. We do not have a collective one. There are many personal tipping points that are moving into timeline 1. If these can be strengthened, then solutions will begin manifesting all over the place. And paradoxically, these are the most difficult people to actually convince. These are the most people because they're the most comfortable. They're the ones that have solutions, and they're right. And I'm not saying I'm right, because I promote the idea that there are no guarantees. And I dare to stand by that. That's all. Just dare stand by your honesty. That's what I have to say today, Ron. I don't know how long I've been talking. It's been a little more than half an hour, right?
Just under 35 minutes at this point.
Okay, well, thank you again for having me. And
You're welcome.
forward to more of your own videos and more interviews with all of the interesting people you come in contact with.
Yeah. All right. Have a good week, and I'll talk to you a week from now.
Namaste.